You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program, a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew. Welcome to a very special episode of the Write Project podcast. Today, we've got a host of authors on to answer one of the most frequent questions that's asked of any author. We're asking them, what other authors are you friends with, and how do they help you become a better writer? And today to answer, we have on
BC Laybolt, the Canadian independent author of the 10th Lunan Regiment series, a military sci-fi saga. He also writes an immersive dark fantasy series. His current titles include To Drown in Sand, Juris Lunans, To Drown in Ash, The Dog, Bone, and Upon a Wake of Flame. BC Laybolt, what other authors are you friends with, and how do they make you become a better writer if you have other author friends?
There's one of my best friends, his name is Lance, and he's working on the beginnings, the scratchings, the developing how to do this, and he would never ever put himself out there in terms of calling himself a writer, but he's teaching me the most about diligence and perseverance, and how to adhere to your own quality standards. So if he ever finishes this book, it's going to be way better than mine. It's going to be amazing. Peter Foote is one of your Engine guys, and he taught me a great deal about business. Actually, whenever I have a question that I don't understand about why people agree to buy things from other people and how that works, he's my go-to. He's my Jedi in that context.
Interesting.
And the other writers that I've learned from, I mean, I could list, I don't know them personally, but Dan Abnett, Aaron Dembski, Bowden, Stephen Pressfield, like all of them. Everything I read, I learn from.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And listen, thanks so much for the opportunity. I mean that, Matthew. It means a great deal.
No problem. No problem at all. I'll get you on again. This was a really fun conversation.
Thank you very much. Next we have Lily McCarthy, the amazing author of Quick Bright Things, the newest lesbian romance novel from Engine Books.
Well, I don't know about writers in the same way that I write religiously super stupid long at any point. But I have one friend who is very dear and close to me who works extremely hard for every D&D session we have ever had. And I don't know, he's like the most motivating person in the world, because he's constantly like, you can do it, you're the best. And, he just builds that ego way too high. But I gotta love him for it,
Okay. I like it. All right. Sounds good.
Next on the line, we have Josh Connors. Connor or Connors?
Connors.
Oh, I thought so, yeah. Josh Connors. There's two of them, apparently. No. He is the author of Small Town Queer, both the play and the adaptation, novel or play or whatever you want to call it. Josh Connors, what other authors, if any, are you friends with? And if you are, how do they help you become a better writer?
I am very good friends with a friend of yours, Sarah Thompson.
Yes, an author of mine. I own her. I own her books currently.
Yes, very good friends with her. We met going on 2 years ago now, and I think it was 4 or 5 months later where we were working on our first project together. A very short one-piece play for a little one-day festival here in town, having to do with seasonal affective disorder. And I think working with Sarah is just it challenges me. She writes a lot, and she is always writing. And it just continually inspires me to keep writing. and her talking to me about her struggles, and sometimes when, writer's block comes on or that kind of thing, like what she's gone through, because she's a few steps ahead of me in this career. So she's got some good advice. She's always there if I need her.
Okay.
So.
That's interesting. I like that. Yeah, Sarah is spectacular, and I had no idea she wrote as much as she did. I was actually it's actually painful because I can remember the amount of times when we would sit and have a drink together or hang out or whatever, because it was at least 3 times a week for most of my 20s. But how many times I would talk about my writing, and she would just listen and say nothing, and I'm like,
Yep.
We're doing this too. What's yeah, and just never told me. Horrible. Thank you very much. Next we have Heather Antos, one of the editors of many, many different comics. Some of my favorite runs of comics ever, like Deadpool, all of Star Wars for a good few year period. Partial creator of Gwenpool, many, just a ridiculous amount of amazing work. Heather Antos, what other creators are you friends with, and how do they help you be a better creative in this industry?
Oh my gosh, I'm friends with, I think all my friends, not all my friends. I have a lot of friends that are creators. One of my best friends, he is actually a creative writing professor here in New York, but he's one of those people who he just likes to like things. And so I think because my job is to be a critic and essentially, and I look at things and how can they be better, and I'm always, tearing things apart. I like having and he and I have vastly different tastes and things, and so I think he reminds me and does a very good job of you don't have to take it so seriously, and just likes it, just like the thing, it's fine, And then I have another friend who's the hardcore fan apologist for everything, which I think helps me, kind of step back a lot of times with things.
Awesome. That's a good answer. Love it. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Sarah Thompson, author of The Love of Summer, The Love of Julia, and one of the editors behind the charity anthology Acceptance, the profits of which help Quadrangle. Sarah Thompson, what other authors are you friends with, and how do they help you become a better writer?
Have I got to name them all?
No.
Okay, so we'll start with you.
Okay.
So there was a long period of time where I stopped writing. Some of it was because I was writing for a living, being a journalist, and to be honest, when you do that, sometimes when you spend all day trying to make sure that something fits into 3 column inches, you do not want to come home and try to turn your brain around and say you don't have those constraints anymore, and try to be creative, because you've been in some ways being creative all the time.
Yep.
And then you started Engine, and it was this big thing that was really pushing me to want to be more creative again, and to try to refocus how I thought about spending the time to be creative. And then when you did the first collection of short stories, The Light Dark, that wasn't From the Rock.
Yeah.
I got it in my head that I was going to complete something for the first time in a very long time, so as to submit to this collection. So, and then, after I said I was going to do it, you text me every other day and asked me if I was going to do it. Until I felt like I was bullied into doing it.
Yes. Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah.
And that was actually just after that I wrote the short story that eventually became The Love of Summer. Let's see, who else have I got? Well, I guess we'll say Amanda Labonte. We'll add her to the list.
Yeah.
She's pretty freaking great.
She is great.
She apparently read my book between here and Clarenville.
She did.
You guys were here one time.
She was a horrible driving partner.
She just read the whole way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. I'd be an even worse driving partner if I was reading while you were driving, because I'd be also throwing up on you.
Yeah.
But she's great. She's always willing to give feedback and talk about it and those kinds of things. And it's really that makes a big difference, is being able to have people who are also writers to talk to about what that is, how it is to communicate with someone who knows what you're trying to say without having to over-explain yourself, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
I suppose we'll put Ellen on that list too, and then I'm going to stop mentioning writers because I could do this for a long time.
You could. All right.
Also has been very supportive in offering feedback and talking about writing and things, and so
excellent.
We'll go with primarily those three.
Okay. All Engine board members.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Next on the line, we have Jed Mckay, a storied author for Marvel Comics, of all places. He has written 3 volumes of his ongoing series, Black Cat. Jed Mckay, what other authors are you friends with, and how do they make you a better writer?
Other authors I'm friends with. I have, obviously, like my writing club, Julia Clahane, Dan Roy, Allie House. That was, honestly, I don't think I would have a professional writing career if I hadn't been part of that writing club. The reason for that is, as anyone who is not being paid to write can tell you, it's extremely easy. The easiest thing in the world, actually, is to not write. I'd always written as a kid, but there'd be great periods of time when I just wouldn't write anything. I'd always be thinking about something. About 10 years ago, I moved to Halifax to go to Mount St. Vincent to get my Bachelor of Education, so I could be a teacher. Yep. And there, we've been talking about young adult novels. I was like, well, I read one. I'm like, well, shit, this is easy. Like, I could write one of these, no problem. And so I started, planning. I'm like, oh, I'm going to write a young adult novel, write a series. We'll see how it goes. It'd be a fun exercise. I think I talked about it for like 2 years. Yeah. Didn't write anything. And then a friend of mine who I hadn't seen for a while was like, oh, how's that novel going that you were talking about like a year ago? And I was like, oh, I'm still planning it. And then in my head, I'm like, I'm still planning it. Like, I haven't done anything. Yeah. Like, it's very easy to shoot your mouth off and just talk about writing. But to actually do the writing, that's the trick. Yeah. So anyways, I sat down, I wrote that novel, never got published. That's fine. It was sort of more for the experience. But then it wasn't till we started our writing club that I had a monthly incentive to not just write something, but write something complete. And then, so through that, just sort of I developed the work ethic. So, such as it is, to turn out a completed story every month. For sure. And that was doing that while still working full time as a teacher. Yeah. So I think that our writing club is probably one of the most formative writing experiences that I've ever had, because it set into place that routine. It set into place that monthly goal, that deadline that needed to be hit.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I find that deadlines and enforceable deadlines, even if it's just self-imposed, it helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and they are self-imposed, but also, I've set goals for myself many times and regularly fail to meet them. But when you know that this meeting is here, and if you have yourself that goal, like, I need to show up as something complete, otherwise I won't get the feedback that I want, then that kind of adds a greater level of accountability to it.
For sure.
Thank you very much. Next we have TzuHao Hsu. She is one of the authors from Us Now,
TzuHao, what are other authors that you are friends with, and how do they help you become a better writer?
So, I mean, always and first and foremost, my incredible gratitude for Lisa Moore. I've actually been a fan of her work even before participating in her workshop that led to the creation of Us Now. And then, of course, by being there, I met other, some more established, some more of emerging artists like myself. So the privilege of working with also a group of racialized writer is that sometimes you don't have to explain the discomfort sometimes, and I don't know how else to explain that. Like, it's just that you don't have to explain the narrative of sometimes I experience these things because of the way I look like, or because of the culture I come from. I don't understand your concept of, your freedom or independence to a certain extent, that it's not the same as my definition of it. And there's conversations sometimes I have to give primers to folks that might not be from a similar background, but for some of the common shared cultural heritages and the traditions and stereotypes, for lack of a better term, sometimes they help and they don't help. But in a setting with other racialized writers, I didn't need to put down the rules of engagement first before I can be very honest and open and sometimes even vulnerable. And that was a very refreshing and wonderful experience. And then, of course, Lisa was just, she's an ally in every possible way, and she's supportive. So it's good to be able to have that space to be safe and creative and open, and then have Lisa guide me professionally to sharpen it into a piece of prose that could be presented. So it was just a general all-around wonderful experience.
Oh, good. Okay. Lovely. That sounds wonderful. I especially like what you're talking about there about, like, I don't know if this is the right word because I'm very much paraphrasing. You didn't say this at all, but like letting your guard down and being able to like not do that pre-explain stuff. And I also like, I love Canada, but there's things about Canada that I would change, and there's things about Canada that I would in the right circumstances complain about. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a complainer, but like, yeah, if I'm at a party and it's like, this, I want it changed, kind of thing. You're sitting around for having a drink or something like that. One thing I notice about my friends who've come from away, for lack of a better term, is that they always feel like they have to say that, like I just said, they always feel like they have to preface a complaint with, I really like being in Canada. It must be just nice to be around people where you don't have to preface that, like, I'm glad I'm here, but when you're making a complaint, like, just get right into the complaints. We all have them, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's not that, like, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a very, very proud Newfoundlander. I always refer to myself as a Taiwanese townie. Yeah, very, very proud townie, by the way. The flies and I do not get along, so it's all good. And I am very grateful for the changes and the growth and my family's ability to settle and grow here. But, the other thing is like you said, like, there are components to what has made up Canadian history, especially in light of recent events when it comes to discoveries of residential schools. Like, there are some parts of the history that no matter how you can't be proud of it. And I don't think there is any shame or harm in admitting that. It's just it's another step of growing up and going forward as a nation. And like, I mean, there's, again, back to the idea of, there's a predominant narrative, but in between the cracks of this narrative, there's always been other stories filling in the space. So, I've had people, which is hilarious, I have people say to me that, like, so and so are coming over and, trying to change who we are. It's like, you're talking to me, I look this way, and they'll tell me, but you're not like them. But what makes me not like them? Like, you need to explain this to me, because I love this place as much as you do, but I know that it is not a perfect place, because there's no such thing as a perfect place.
Well, I mean, and this comes back to creative destruction. You know what I mean? Like, you can't survive. A culture can't survive without new input. You know what I mean? It has never happened, and it never will happen. Change is good. Diversity is good. Diversity just I mean, like a culture that's completely left onto its own, both metaphorically and realistically, will destroy itself from just incest within 8 generations. You know what I mean? Like you need new.
I think it's interesting because so I have some friends who are like, I am by no means a scientist in any way, shape, or form, but that conversation sounds really similar to the concept of actually biological evolution, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that it is already reflected in nature that by the very nature of things, diversity is what encourages growth and encourages evolution and lets you adapt, move on, and continue to be a part of the world. So why wouldn't you do that creatively? It's the two things, it's the physical and the metaphysical coming together to make sense.
Big time. Like cultural evolution and biological evolution, to me, there doesn't need to be a distinction. Like they are unbelievably similar. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not that we're going to become X-Men all of a sudden, but you know.
I mean, you know, if I grew adamantium claws tomorrow, I won't have a problem with it. But
yeah, that's true. That's true. You'd have to grow the bone claws and get the adamantium put on.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Anyway,
still, bone claws would still be pretty cool. I'd be down with that.
Yeah. Can you tell I'm a nerd?
Can you tell I'm a nerd?
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that you didn't give me a weird look when it, like, I love bringing up to some people, you know, the claws aren't metal, right? And they're like what? Like, you know.
Thank you very much. Next we have
Colleen Helm from Utah. She is the writer of the Shelby Nichols Adventures series, which started with Carrots way back in 2011. Wow, it started way back in 2011. And to my knowledge, currently has 14 sequels. So it's quite the long-running series, including Fast Money, Lie or Die, Secrets That Kill, all the way down to what I think is your newest release, Dying Wishes. Do I have that correct?
That's right. That's correct.
Colleen Helm, can you name some other authors that you're friends with, if any, and how do they help you become a better writer?
I do know a few, but they're mostly online. Isn't that crazy?
No, that's how we met, so I believe it. Yeah.
That's right. I met Julie Moffat. She writes a fun series, and she's very encouraging. There's a part of authors where I've known several, I've been in groups with several, and there are those who are encouraging and saying, yeah, let's make this happen, and others who are a little more competitive. And I did go to a conference once with some other authors where we were meeting a bunch of readers, and there was one author that kept talking and talked about her stuff all the time and didn't give any of us any time to talk about our books, and people were getting quite upset by that. And so, you know, you want that support and that learning from other authors. I did meet Orson Scott Card. I took a class from him, and he was really nice and encouraging and wonderful, and that was fun. But
he's an interesting fellow, but
yes.
Yeah. I've met authors like that. The ones who go on about their own stuff. I remember being on a panel with 10 different authors, and like they would find a way to make every question about their work, even if it's not. You know what I mean? Like they're writing like a space travel book, and someone asks a question specifically about werewolves, and they're like, for the werewolf authors and up there, and they're like, well, my aliens are kind of like werewolves, so I'll answer this. Just makes everything. I'm like, for God's sakes, go be quiet.
Yeah, you don't want to be like that.
No, and I wish they would get through their heads is that the audience sees through it. Like you're making your peers upset, like the other authors up there, but the readers just see right through it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't work.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't work at all.
Thank you very much. Next we have Andrew Hawthorne, currently best known for his work with the CBC as a wonderful journalist. But I know him as the author of Silvern Voices from Mythology from the Rock, the best-selling 2021 anthology. And previous to this, I knew him as the author of Mere Appendix from Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 54, January 2009, an amazing issue of the original Mirage Comics run of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Andrew Hawthorne, what other authors are you friends with, and how did they help you become a better writer?
What other authors am I friends with? I am friends with, when I was getting into Turtles, I met a lot of the other guys that were writing Turtles at the time, and particularly Jake Black, who's a writer of several Turtles books, and he's also written a lot of Superman books, and he currently is employed by the WWE, and he's writing wrestling books, and he is perhaps the nicest guy anybody has ever met. And at the time, he was dealing with a form of cancer, and he was going through chemotherapy, and was really, like, it was really weighing on him. He kicked cancer's butt, and he's doing much better. But like, he was just, he was always great with advice, and he is a great guy to hang around. And the most way that he helped me with my career was the year my Turtles book came out. He was sitting at the Mirage table and was like, "Hey, you want to take my chair and sit at the Mirage booth and like sign books for a while, and I'll just go wander around and stuff." So he like gave up his seat at the table for a few hours.
Nice.
So that I could like live the comic dream and be sitting there with like Steve Murphy and Peter Laird at the Ninja Turtles table, meeting fans of Ninja Turtles and selling my book and talking about Turtles. And you know, you got to pay for those chairs. He paid for that chair, but he was fine with it because he's an amazing guy. So Jake Black, go find all of his work. He's written a bunch of Smallville. I think he wrote, like, there's currently cards out for the Picard series, Star Trek Picard, and he wrote the backs of all those. Like, he's a brilliant writer. He's done a lot of really interesting stuff.
Nice. Yeah. I will check out more of that, especially his, I'm going to check and see what issues of Ninja Turtles he wrote and check those out too.
He wrote a bunch of Tales issues. I think he wrote the last Tales issue.
Oh, that's good.
He's written a lot of that stuff. So high recommend.
Awesome. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up that your wife is a writer.
My wife is a brilliant writer. She has a PhD. The way I usually describe Ainsley is that she is a Yale graduate belly dancing model who is also a published author. So she's the most brilliant, wonderful person I've ever met. Yes. Anyway, I'm glad you brought her up.
Yeah. It's like, hey, who are your friends and who are your friends who are writers and how do they make you a better writer? And I'm just sitting here like, you better bring up his wife.
I mean, she makes me a better everything. So, you know, like all joy I have in my life comes from her. So there's that. But she makes me a better writer. She is a brilliant human being. One of the top 10 smartest people I've met in real life. She is. It's true. And, you know, I could talk about Ainsley all day, obviously, but, you know, we co-host Apocalypse Then on CBC, which is a show we both write and host. But all of our writing, all of the writing that we do, we pass back and forth and say, like, is this good? Does this make sense? And we help refine each other's stuff. And like, that's an important process. I think Stephen King in On Writing, he said, like, everybody, you've always got to write for an audience, and his audience was always his wife, and she was always his first reader. And that's true for us too. We make each other better writers, and we're always very careful, like when we're like, oh, hey, you know, here's my new story, like, can you read this? And then we'll say something like, and what I really want you to say is that it's great. Yeah. And then later maybe you can tell me where the mistakes are. And so the first read is like, this is amazing. And then in a week we're like, okay, can you read it again and tell me what I need to fix? Like, yes, okay, you got to fix this paragraph and you got to do this. And then we refine it. But that's, to have a partner like that, it doesn't have to be your spouse. It can be a friend or your agent or or some peers in the community, can be a writing circle, is invaluable.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.